At 12:17 a.m., billionaire Ethan Grayson discovered something that would destroy everything he believed about trust. Security footage. 3 months of it. His maid, entering his kitchen after midnight, taking something. But here's what made his blood run cold. She wasn't taking what you'd expect. She passed his Rolex collection worth $2 million. Ignored the safe combination written in his desk drawer. Never touched the cash he left carelessly on counters. What she was taking made no sense. Until he discovered the truth about what was happening in his own home. A truth so shocking that when the FBI got involved, even they couldn't believe it. 7 people's lives were destroyed that night. 3 went to prison. 1 made headlines around the world. And it all started with a plastic bag and a decision that would haunt a billionaire forever. Before we begin, let us know in the comment section where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe for more profound stories and like this video. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck midnight as Ethan Grayson's Bentley pulled into the underground garage of his Manhattan penthouse. The billionaire tech mogul had just closed a $3 billion acquisition in Dubai, his biggest deal yet, but exhaustion weighed on him like lead. All he wanted was his Egyptian cotton sheets and 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The private elevator opened directly into his foyer, where Italian marble reflected the city lights streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. That's when he heard it, a soft rustling from the kitchen, followed by the distinctive click of his Sub-Zero refrigerator closing. His security system hadn't triggered. This was someone with access. Ethan moved silently across the marble, his Berluti Oxfords muffled by the Persian runner. Through the kitchen's archway he saw her, a small figure in a gray uniform, her back to him, carefully wrapping something in paper towels. When she turned toward the service entrance, a shaft of moonlight illuminated her face. Tasha Moore, his housemaid of 3 years. In her arms, she cradled a plastic bag bulging with food from his refrigerator, the remains of tonight's catered dinner, fresh fruit from his morning delivery, a loaf of artisan bread. Tasha. The word came out sharper than he intended. She gasped, the bag slipping from her grip, sending a container of truffle mac and cheese spattering across his Calcutta marble floor. Mr. Grayson, I didn't, you weren't supposed to. Her hands trembled as she dropped to her knees, frantically trying to clean the mess with her bare hands. Stop. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over his security chief's number. You're stealing from me. In my own home. Please, sir. Tears carved tracks down her dark skin. I can explain. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ethan had built his empire on quick decisions and zero tolerance for betrayal. He'd fired executives for less. But something in her eyes, not defiance, not even fear, but a kind of desperate shame, made him pause. You have 60 seconds, he said coldly. What she told him in those 60 seconds would haunt him for the rest of his life. What he discovered in the days that followed would shatter everything he thought he knew about success, poverty, and the invisible people who keep the wealthy world spinning. Because Tasha Moore wasn't just stealing food. She was hiding a secret that would expose the rotting foundation of his perfect world, and force him to confront the kind of man he'd become while building his billions. Ethan Grayson didn't build a $4 billion empire by being soft. By 7 a.m., he was already in his corner office, 47 floors above Manhattan, watching the city wake up beneath clouds of steam and ambition. The view from Grayson Technologies reminded him daily of how far he'd climbed, and how far others could fall. Sir. Mara knocked, entering with her tablet clutched like a shield. She'd been his assistant for 5 years, long enough to read his moods like weather patterns. This morning's forecast. Stormy. The footage you requested. She connected the tablet to his wall display. Security compiled everything from the last 6 months. The screen filled with timestamp after timestamp. November 3rd, 11:47 p.m. November 18th, 12:23 a.m. December 2nd, 1:15 a.m. Always late, always alone, always the same pattern. Tasha would enter his kitchen, check over her shoulder, then carefully, almost reverently, pack leftovers into bags she brought from home. Look at this. Mara zoomed in on one frame. She walked right past your Patek Philippe on the counter. There's $8,000 in cash in that drawer she opens every week to get cleaning supplies. But all she takes is food. Ethan's jaw tightened. Food I was going to throw away anyway. He thought of last week's board dinner. 60 people, enough catering for 200. The waste had bothered him for exactly 3 seconds before he'd moved on to quarterly projections. His refrigerator was restocked twice weekly, most of it untouched. He ate at restaurants or survived on whatever his nutritionist delivered. The timestamp from 3 years ago caught his eye. Her interview day. He remembered it now, how she'd sat perfectly straight in his foyer, wearing what was obviously her best dress, clutching a folder of references like a lifeline. She'd been different from the other applicants. Quieter. More careful with her words. "I don't need much, Mr. Grayson," she'd said. "Just steady work. I'll be invisible. You won't even know I'm here." She'd kept that promise. Until last night. His phone buzzed. The board meeting. He was already 10 minutes late. Ethan stood, straightening his Tom Ford suit, but his mind stayed on those timestamps. During the meeting, while his CFO droned about market volatility, Ethan found himself calculating. Tasha worked 50 hours a week at $25 an hour. In Manhattan, that was nothing. How much was her rent? Did she have insurance? Why had he never asked? Ethan. Richard Blackwood, his lawyer and golf partner, caught him after the meeting. "You look distracted. Everything all right with the custody arrangement?" The custody arrangement. Another failure. His ex-wife had been right. He'd loved his company more than his family. Now he saw his daughter Emma twice a month, if she felt like it. 17 years old and she barely knew him. "Actually, I need your advice on something else." Ethan pulled Richard aside. "If an employee steals from me, fire them. Press charges. Send a message." Richard didn't even hesitate. "Zero tolerance, you know that." "What if it's more complicated?" "It never is." Richard checked his Rolex. "Trust me, I've seen how these things go. Give them an inch, they take a mile. You didn't build this empire by being a bleeding heart." No, he hadn't. He'd built it by being ruthless, decisive, cold when necessary. The same qualities that had cost him his marriage, his relationship with his daughter, and most of his friends. But they'd made him rich. Wasn't that what mattered? The drive home that evening took 40 minutes through Manhattan traffic. 40 minutes to prepare his termination speech. To remind himself that theft was theft, regardless of circumstances. That Tasha had violated his trust. But as his Bentley pulled into the garage, Ethan found himself thinking about that look in her eyes. Not defiance. Not entitlement. Just exhaustion. And for the first time in years, Ethan Grayson wondered if he was about to make a terrible mistake. The private elevator opened to an unexpected sight. Tasha was already there, sitting on his Italian leather bench in the foyer, still wearing her gray uniform from the night before. She stood when she saw him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. "I know you saw the cameras," she said quietly. "I came to save you the trouble." Ethan set down his briefcase, the termination speech dying in his throat. She'd made it easy for him. Too easy. So why did his chest feel tight? "How long?" he asked. 6 months. She met his eyes directly, and he saw something he hadn't expected. Not shame, but a fierce kind of dignity. "Since my paycheck started coming late. First it was a week, then 2. HR said it was a system error, that they'd fix it. You could have come to me. A bitter laugh escaped her. Could I? Could I really walk into your office and say, Mr. Grayson, I can't feed my children? Do you know what that costs someone like me? Someone like you. A black woman. A maid. A nobody in your world. She straightened her shoulders. I have 2 kids. Malik is 9, wants to be an engineer like you. Zuri just turned 6, and she thinks the sun rises and sets with her big brother. They don't know I haven't paid rent in 2 months. They don't know the electricity might get cut off tomorrow. The words tumbled out faster now, as if a dam had broken. This morning, Malik asked for breakfast. Just cereal, nothing special. I told him we'd have a big dinner instead, made it sound like a fun game. He pretended to believe me. 9 years old, and he's already learned to pretend hunger is a choice. Ethan thought of his own breakfast that morning, a $60 omelet at the Four Seasons he'd barely touched, focused on his phone instead. When was the last time he'd worried about a meal? Even as a child, with his investment banker father and fashion executive mother, food had been abundant, often excessive. The food you took would have been in your garbage by morning. Tasha's voice grew stronger. I watched you throw away more food from one dinner party than my family sees in a month. I told myself it wasn't really stealing if it was already waste. I was wrong. I know that. She reached into her purse, pulling out an envelope. I kept track of everything. Every container, every piece of fruit. I was going to pay you back when, her voice cracked, when things got better. Ethan stared at the envelope, meticulously detailed, dates and items listed in careful handwriting. She'd documented her own theft, creating evidence against herself. It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever seen. Why didn't you just ask for help? The question came out softer than he intended. Tasha looked at him then, really looked at him, and he felt exposed under her gaze. Because people like you don't understand people like me, she said simply. You see numbers, efficiency, return on investment. You don't see the mother who irons her uniform every night so she looks respectable enough to clean your toilet. You don't see the woman who takes 3 buses to get here because she can't afford the subway fare increase. You donate millions to charity galas, but you've never seen hunger sitting in your own kitchen. The words landed like physical blows. Ethan found himself unable to respond, his prepared speech evaporating entirely. I'll get my things, Tasha said, moving toward the service entrance. Wait. The word surprised them both. Don't come tomorrow. Her shoulders sagged. I understand. No, you don't. Don't come tomorrow, but come back the day after. Same time, same shift. Confusion flickered across her face. Mr. Grayson. Just come back Wednesday. We'll discuss this properly then. After she left, Ethan stood alone in his marble foyer, her envelope still in his hands. He pulled out his phone, calling Mara. I need you to pull all of Tasha Moore's payroll records, he said. Every check, every delay, every excuse from HR. Something's not right. Sir, is everything? No, Ethan admitted, surprising himself with the honesty. No, nothing's right at all. Wednesday came too slowly. Ethan had spent Tuesday in his office, but the numbers on his screens might as well have been hieroglyphics. Mara's preliminary findings on the payroll records showed irregularities, delays, missing overtime, explanations that didn't add up. But it was the address in Tasha's file that kept drawing his attention. Webster Avenue, the Bronx, 23 miles from his penthouse. A different universe. When Tasha arrived Wednesday evening, Ethan was waiting in the foyer wearing jeans and a sweater. Clothes his ex-wife had bought him years ago, barely worn. We're going for a drive, he said. Mr. Grayson, I don't understand. I want to see where you live." The words came out more commanding than intended. He softened his tone. "You've seen my world for 3 years. I need to see yours." The fear in her eyes almost stopped him. "That's not necessary. Please." The word, simple, foreign on his tongue, changed something in her expression. She nodded slowly. His Bentley looked obscene on Webster Avenue. Ethan had instructed his driver to stay with the car, following Tasha up cracked sidewalks past broken streetlights that hadn't been fixed in years. Graffiti covered most surfaces, some artistic, most just territorial markers of neglect. A homeless man slept in a doorway, covered in newspapers. Tasha stepped around him with practiced ease. "Elevator's been broken since August," she said, leading him up a narrow stairwell that reeked of mildew and something else. Hopelessness, maybe. "Second floor, third, fourth." The fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars, and somewhere a baby cried behind thin walls. She stopped at 4B, keys jangling. "Mr. Grayson, please understand. I do my best." The door opened to revelation. The apartment was tiny, smaller than his bedroom closet, but spotless. Every surface gleamed with the same meticulous care she brought to his penthouse. Mismatched furniture arranged with precision. Walls painted cheerful yellow, probably to hide water stains. And there, at a folding table, 2 children sat doing homework by candlelight. "Mama." The little girl, Zuri, jumped up, then froze, seeing Ethan. "It's okay, baby. This is Mr. Grayson. From Mama's work." The boy, Malik, stood slowly, extending his hand with startling formality. "Pleased to meet you, sir. Mama says you built computers that changed the world." Ethan shook the small hand, his throat tight. "Your mother's very kind." "We're doing homework," Zuri announced proudly. "By candlelight like Abraham Lincoln. Malik says it saves electricity." December in New York, and Ethan could see their breath. No heat. He noticed the single blanket on the couch, carefully folded. The hot plate on the counter. The stove didn't work. The empty refrigerator humming loudly, probably dying. "Would you like some water?" Malik offered. "We have tap water. It's very cold." The politeness destroyed him. These children, offering what little they had to a billionaire who'd never missed a meal. That's when he saw it, on the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a butterfly. A crayon drawing of a man in a blue suit with gray hair, standing in front of tall buildings. Mr. Ethan, written in careful letters across the top. "You drew this?" he asked Malik. The boy nodded shyly. "For my school project. We had to draw someone who inspires us. Mama talks about how smart you are, how you started with nothing." Started with nothing. Ethan wanted to laugh or cry. His nothing had been a mere $1 million loan from his father. Zuri tugged his sleeve, holding up an apple, bruised, probably from a food bank. "Do you want to share?" "I'm good at sharing." The apple. 1 apple. Being offered half by a 6-year-old who had nothing else. "That's very kind," he managed. "But I'm not hungry." "Mama says it's important to eat even when you're not hungry," Zuri said seriously. "Because you don't know when food might come again." Tasha's face crumpled. "Zuri, that's enough." But the damage was done. Ethan stood in that freezing apartment, watching 2 children do homework by candlelight to save electricity, offering to share their only apple, with his picture on their refrigerator like he was some kind of hero. He wasn't a hero. He was a man who'd never seen poverty until it was cleaning his mansion. "I should go," he said quietly. At the door, Malik called out, "Mr. Grayson? Thank you for giving Mama a job. She says you're a good boss." Ethan fled down those stairs like the building was on fire, Tasha's footsteps echoing behind him. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Zuri's small hand offering him half of her bruised apple. By 4 a.m., he was in his home office, laptop open, diving into 3 years of household payroll records with the obsessive focus that had built his empire. What he found made him sick. At 7 a.m. sharp, Mara arrived at the penthouse with a box of files and dark circles under her eyes. "I've been up all night too," she said, spreading documents across his dining table. "Sir, this is worse than we thought." "Show me." "Marcus Wellman, your former house manager. He left 8 months ago. Said it was for a better opportunity. But look." She pulled up bank records on her tablet. He created ghost overtime entries, approved them himself, then redirected the payments. But that's not the worst part. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Continue." When employees complained about late or missing wages, he told them it was a corporate accounting error. Told them not to bother you with trivial matters or they'd be terminated. Tasha filed 3 complaints. Mara pulled out the forms, each one stamped resolved in Marcus's handwriting. He marked them as handled but never forwarded them to HR or accounting. She tried to report this. 3 times. Yes. And each time, Marcus threatened her job. "Look at this email." Mara showed him the screen. She wrote to Marcus saying her children were hungry, that she needed her pay. His response was that financial planning wasn't the company's responsibility, and that plenty of people would be grateful for her position. Ethan's hands shook with rage. In his own home, under his own roof, this had happened. "There's more," Mara said quietly. "I spoke with the other staff privately, promised them protection. Rosa, your weekend housekeeper? She's been working 16-hour shifts to cover when Tasha couldn't afford the bus fare. James, your driver? He's been slipping Tasha $20 here and there for groceries." They all knew. They created their own safety net because they knew management wouldn't help. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" Mara looked at him with something close to pity. "Sir, when was the last time you spoke to any of them beyond basic instructions?" The truth stung. He paid these people to be invisible, and they'd obliged. Even when they were drowning. "I found this in Tasha's locker." Mara handed him a worn notebook. "She gave me permission to show you." Every page was dated, detailing her work with meticulous care. Asterisk December 3rd. Arrived 5:45 a.m., bus delayed. Cleaned all bathrooms, organized Mr. Grayson's closet by color as requested. Left 7 p.m. Note: Mr. Grayson seemed stressed about Tokyo deal. Made sure his office coffee was extra strong. Asterisk. 3 years of entries. 3 years of caring about details he'd never noticed. And in the margins, heartbreaking notes. Malik needs new shoes. Zuri's cough getting worse. $1.50 short for bus fare, walked from 125 to street. Pull up cost of living data for New York, Ethan ordered. The numbers were damning. What he considered good pay, $25 an hour, meant Tasha made about $3,200 a month after taxes. Average rent for a 1-bedroom in the Bronx, $1,800. Utilities, $200. Food for 3, $600 minimum. Transportation, $127 monthly MetroCard. Healthcare, clothing, school supplies. The math didn't work. It had never worked. "I pay the industry standard," Ethan said weakly. "The industry standard assumes supplemental income or support," Mara replied. "Single mothers don't have that luxury." Ethan thought of his own monthly expenses. $50,000 without blinking. His wine collection worth more than Tasha would earn in a decade. The watch on his wrist could pay her rent for 3 years. "Build a case against Marcus," he said finally. "Full forensic accounting. I want criminal charges." And Tasha. He thought of Malik's drawing on the refrigerator. Of Zuri sharing her apple. Of Tasha documenting every day of work like evidence of her worth. "We're going to make this right," he said. "All of it." But even as he said it, Ethan knew money alone wouldn't fix what was broken. The system that created this desperation, this invisible suffering in his own home, That would take more than writing a check. It would take admitting he'd been part of the problem all along. The next morning, Ethan did something he'd never done in 12 years of owning the penthouse. He called an all-staff meeting. By 10 a.m., his marble foyer held 23 people. Housekeepers, drivers, security, maintenance. They stood nervously, unused to being visible in spaces they normally cleaned in shadow. Marcus Wellman arrived last, summoned from his new position at a hedge fund downtown. He walked in with his usual swagger, designer suit impeccable, until he saw Ethan's expression. "Thank you all for coming," Ethan began, his voice carrying the same authority he used in boardrooms. "I've discovered something that disgusts me more than any corporate betrayal I've encountered." He placed a thick folder on the Italian marble console. "For the past 18 months, someone in this room has been stealing. Not from me, from you." Murmurs rippled through the group. Marcus's face drained of color. Marcus Wellman embezzled over $200,000 by falsifying overtime records and redirecting payments meant for staff wages. Ethan opened the folder, revealing bank statements, forged documents, emails. He threatened anyone who complained. "He told you to be grateful for scraps while he stole your children's food money." That's preposterous," Marcus stammered. "I handled clerical errors, nothing more. These people don't understand." "These people." Ethan's voice turned ice cold. "These people trusted you. Tasha Moore filed 3 complaints about missing wages. You marked them resolved while her children went hungry." Rosa gasped. James, the driver, put a protective hand on Tasha's shoulder. Marcus tried another approach. "Ethan, come on. We've known each other for years. This is a misunderstanding. These kinds of people always claim." "Stop." Ethan stepped closer. "The only kind of people I see here is the kind who shows up every day, who takes 3 buses because they can't afford the subway, who works 16-hour shifts to cover for colleagues who can't afford to get here. And then there's your kind, parasites who prey on their desperation." He nodded to his security chief. "Mr. Wellman is banned from all my properties. The FBI will be in touch about fraud charges." Marcus's composure finally cracked. "You can't. I have connections." "So do I," Ethan said quietly. "And mine include the district attorney." As security escorted Marcus out, his protests echoing off marble walls, Ethan turned back to his staff. The fear in their eyes broke his heart. "I failed you," he said simply. "I paid you what I thought was fair without ever asking what you needed to survive. Effective immediately, all household staff salaries are doubled. Full health care coverage for your families. Transportation allowances. And 3 months of back pay to compensate for what was stolen." Shocked silence. Then Rosa started crying. James whistled low. Others simply stared, disbelieving. "Tasha," Ethan said, and she stepped forward hesitantly. "I owe you the biggest apology. You tried to report this. You asked for help the only way you could without risking your job. And I was too blind to see it. Mr. Grayson, You called me a good boss. Your son drew my picture for his hero project." His voice cracked. "I wasn't a hero. I wasn't even decent. But I'm going to try to do better." Later, in his office, Tasha sat across from him, tears streaming down her face as he showed her the new salary structure, the health insurance that would cover Zuri's respiratory issues, the education fund for both children. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's not enough," he replied. "But it's a start." That evening, a team of contractors descended on the Bronx apartment. New heating system, working stove, proper beds for the children. Ethan carried in boxes of groceries himself, watching Malik and Zuri's eyes widen at food that wasn't from a food bank. "It's like Christmas." Zuri squealed, hugging a box of cereal. Tasha pulled him aside. "I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Ethan interrupted. "It's justice. The difference matters." Hours later, Ethan stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by millions of dollars of art and furniture that suddenly felt like props in a museum. His empire had never felt emptier. But for the first time in years, maybe in his life, he felt something more valuable than success. He felt human. The changes started small, almost imperceptibly, like cracks spreading through ice before it breaks. First came the paperwork. Ethan sat with his financial advisor, establishing trust funds for Malik and Zuri's education. Full ride through college, he insisted. Graduate school if they want it. No limits. The advisor raised an eyebrow at the amounts but said nothing. Ethan had earned the right to his conscience. "I can't let you do this," Tasha said when he showed her the documents. They sat in his home office, spring sunlight warming the space that had always felt cold before. "You're not letting me do anything," Ethan replied. "I'm investing in potential I almost let slip through my fingers. Malik wants to be an engineer. That drawing on your refrigerator? That's a kid who sees possibility where others see obstacles. And Zuri wants to be an artist," Tasha finished, smiling despite her tears. "She draws on everything. I buy her notebooks from the dollar store, but she fills them in days. Then she'll have all the notebooks she needs. And real art supplies. And lessons if she wants them." The second change was Tasha's promotion. Household Operations Manager, the new title read, with a salary that made her gasp. "I don't know how to." "You've been managing this household for 3 years," Ethan interrupted. "I'm just finally paying you for it." But the most unexpected change was dinner. It started accidentally. Ethan had been working late in his home office when the smell of cooking drew him to the kitchen. The staff was eating together. Rose's homemade enchiladas, James telling stories about his grandchildren, the evening security guard laughing at something on his phone. They froze when they saw him. "Please don't stop," Ethan said. Would there be enough for one more?" Now, 3 weeks later, it was routine. Ethan ate dinner with his staff, learning their names, their stories, their dreams. James was putting his grandson through community college. Rosa sent half her salary to family in Guatemala. They were all surviving their own versions of impossible math. "Bring the children Saturday," Ethan said to Tasha one evening. "I want to show Malik the computer lab." That Saturday changed everything. Malik stood in Ethan's home office, staring at the wall of monitors like he'd entered NASA. "You built all this?" "I started with one computer and an idea," Ethan said, pulling up a chair for the boy. "Want to see how coding works?" For 2 hours they worked side by side, Malik absorbing everything with startling speed. Meanwhile, Zuri had colonized the living room floor with art supplies Ethan had ordered, creating a masterpiece she titled "Mr. Ethan's house has too many windows but they're pretty." "Can I put this in my office?" Ethan asked her. She considered gravely. "It's $5. Zuri." Tasha scolded, but Ethan was already pulling out his wallet. "Best $5 I've ever spent." Over coffee that evening, after the children were absorbed in a movie, Tasha finally shared her story. The ex-husband who'd started with pushing and ended with a restraining order. The shelter that helped her escape. The 2 years of rebuilding from nothing. "You're the strongest person I know," Ethan said quietly. "I'm just a mother," she replied. "We do what we have to." The next week, Ethan visited his first food bank. Tasha had mentioned volunteering there before the wages were stolen, and he wanted to understand. The line stretched around the block: teachers, construction workers, elderly couples. People with jobs without enough. 37 million Americans face food insecurity, the director told him. In New York alone, 1.4 million. That afternoon, Ethan called an emergency board meeting. "We're restructuring our entire wage system," he announced. "Every Grayson Technologies employee, from janitors to executives, will earn a living wage based on their city's cost of living." "That'll cost millions," his CFO protested. "We made $2 billion in profit last quarter," Ethan replied. We can afford to ensure our employees can afford to eat. The vote was close, but it passed. Walking out, board member Richard Blackwood pulled him aside. "This is about that maid, isn't it?" "Her name is Tasha," Ethan said firmly. "And yes, she opened my eyes to what success really means." That night, Ethan found a new drawing slipped under his office door. Zuri had drawn his penthouse, but now it was full of people, all sitting around a table, sharing a meal. At the bottom, in careful letters, Mr. Ethan's family. For the first time in his life, the word fit. The story broke on a Tuesday morning, though not the way Ethan had planned. Billionaire's guilty conscience. Tech moguls made charity stunt, read the Business Insider headline. Someone had leaked the security footage of Tasha taking food, along with news of her promotion and the children's trust funds. The narrative was ugly. A rich man buying absolution for his neglect. Ethan's phone hadn't stopped ringing. His publicist wanted damage control. His board wanted explanations. His ex-wife called to say their daughter Emma had seen the news at school. "Is it true?" Emma asked when he called her back. "You didn't know your maid was starving?" The shame in his 17-year-old daughter's voice cut deeper than any headline. "I'm going to make a statement," Tasha said that evening. She stood in his office, shoulders squared with the same dignity she'd shown that first night. "People need to hear the truth." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do. They're making this about you. But there are millions of me out there, invisible, struggling. They need to know someone sees them." The video was simple. Tasha sat in her apartment, the renovated one, but she made sure to show photos of how it had been. Malik and Zuri sat beside her, holding her hands. "People want to talk about Mr. Grayson's guilt or his charity," she began, looking directly at the camera. "But this isn't about him. It's about a system where someone can work 50 hours a week and still watch their children go hungry. It's about dignity, how we deny it to people who clean our homes, serve our food, raise our children." She paused, composing herself. "I took food. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed anymore either. Because that shame belongs to a society that pays us below survival and then judges us for surviving anyway. Mr. Grayson didn't give me charity. He gave me justice. He gave me the chance to feed my children without stealing. That shouldn't be revolutionary, but apparently it is." The video went viral within hours. 20 million views in the first day. #DignityNotCharity began trending. Other domestic workers started sharing their stories. The nanny who slept in her car, the janitor who hadn't seen a doctor in 5 years, the home health aide choosing between her medicine and her rent. Ethan watched it all from his office, calls flooding in. Some billionaire friends offered support. More criticized him for setting dangerous precedents. "You're ruining it for all of us," one hedge fund manager texted. "Now they'll expect living wages." "Good," Ethan texted back. 3 weeks later, at PS 163 in the Bronx, 9-year-old Malik Moore stood before his 4th grade class for their Modern Heroes presentation. "My hero isn't Superman or Black Panther," he began, voice clear. "My hero is Mr. Ethan Grayson. Not because he's rich, but because he learned he was wrong and tried to fix it. He saw my mom was struggling and instead of firing her, he asked why. He taught me that real heroes don't just save people. They change the systems that hurt them in the first place." The teacher posted the video. Another viral moment. Another crack in the wall. The Moore Foundation launched 6 weeks later, without fanfare or galas. The first community kitchen opened in the Bronx, a converted warehouse that could serve 500 meals a day. But it was more than food, job training, childcare during shifts, financial literacy classes, legal aid for wage theft. "Why the Moore Foundation?" a reporter asked at the opening. "Why not the Grayson Foundation?" Ethan gestured to Tasha, who stood beside him in a business suit, her new title of Foundation co-director gleaming on her badge. "Because the Moores taught me what generosity really looks like. They offered to share when they had nothing. That's the spirit we want to spread. Other cities called, wanting their own more foundation kitchens. Domestic workers' unions gained thousands of members. 3 states introduced living wage legislation. The ripples spread wider than Ethan had imagined. But the moment that mattered most came that evening, as they cleaned up after serving 500 meals. Malik was helping stack chairs while Zuri drew at a corner table. "Mr. Ethan," Malik said quietly, "thank you for seeing my mom. Really seeing her." Ethan looked across the room at Tasha, who was laughing with a group of women who'd come for dinner, sharing resources, building community. "She saw me first," Ethan replied. "She saw someone worth saving, even when I couldn't see it myself." 6 months later, October sunshine warmed the crowd gathered outside the Fifth Moore Foundation location in Queens. The converted warehouse had been transformed into something beautiful. Walls painted with murals by local artists, gardens planted by community volunteers, windows that flooded the space with light. Tasha stood at the podium, no longer the woman who'd trembled in Ethan's foyer. She wore her authority like a second skin, speaking to 300 people who'd come to celebrate. 6 months ago, a video of me went viral, she began. A maid who stole food. A mother who failed. But what you didn't see in that video was the thousands of us who make impossible choices every day. Today, we're changing that narrative. The Moore Foundation isn't just about feeding bodies, it's about nourishing dignity, restoring hope, and proving that no one is disposable. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan watched from the side, marveling at her transformation. Or maybe it wasn't transformation at all. Maybe this was who she'd always been, finally given space to shine. "Now, I'd like to invite my children to cut the ribbon." Malik, now 10 and several inches taller, walked up with Zuri, 7 and beaming, wearing a dress she'd painted herself with fabric markers. They held the oversized scissors together, and as the ribbon fell, the crowd cheered. Ethan took the podium next, his usual corporate confidence tempered with something softer. 9 months ago, I thought wealth meant numbers in an account. I thought worth was measured in market caps and profit margins. He paused, finding Tasha's eyes in the crowd. Then I learned that the richest person I knew was a woman who shared her last dollar with anyone who needed it more. True wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give. True worth isn't what you achieve, it's who you lift up along the way. A movement at the back of the crowd caught his eye. Emma, his daughter, standing uncertainly by the entrance. They hadn't spoken in 2 months. Another argument about his absence, his priorities. But she was here. Their eyes met. She gave a small nod. He nodded back, his throat tight. The kitchen served its first meal that afternoon. Tasha's mother's lasagna recipe, scaled up to feed hundreds. The same dish Tasha had been taking that night 9 months ago. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. From theft to abundance, one volunteer murmured, serving generous portions. As the crowd thinned and cleanup began, Tasha pulled Ethan aside. "I have something for you." She handed him a simple wooden frame. Inside was a photo from last week, Ethan at his dining table, but not alone. Tasha and her children were there, along with Rosa, James, and half the household staff, all laughing at something Zuri had said. At the bottom, in Zuri's careful handwriting, "Mr. Ethan's family." Zuri insisted on the caption, Tasha said softly. Ethan couldn't speak. The photo captured something he'd never had in all his family portraits. Genuine joy, connection, belonging. Emma approached then, hesitant. "Dad." "Emma." He turned, still holding the frame. "I'm so glad you came." She looked at the photo, then at Tasha and her children cleaning nearby, laughing together. "Is this why you've changed?" "They taught me what I was missing," he admitted. "What we were missing." Emma was quiet for a moment. Maybe I could volunteer here sometimes. Learn what you learned." The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. Malik had been accepted to the Bronx Academy of Science and Mathematics. Full scholarship plus the supplementary funding from his trust. "I'm going to build computers like you," he told Ethan. But I'm going to make sure the people who clean the offices can afford them too. Zuri's first art exhibition opened at the community center that same month. 20 paintings, all for sale, proceeds going to the Moore Foundation. The centerpiece was a massive canvas showing the view from Ethan's penthouse, but the windows reflected the Bronx apartment, the community kitchen, faces of hundreds they'd served. It's called Two Worlds, One Family, she announced proudly. That evening, Ethan and Tasha stood on his penthouse balcony, preparing for tomorrow's board meeting about expanding to 20 cities. The sun set over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of hope. "Did you ever imagine this?" Tasha asked. "When you caught me that night?" "I thought I was catching a thief," Ethan replied. "Instead, I caught a glimpse of who I could be." She smiled, and for a moment they stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker to life, each one a story, a struggle, a possibility for change. The circle was complete. From scarcity to abundance. From judgment to justice. From loneliness to family. And in that New York twilight, two worlds that should never have touched had become one.
Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the videos on your screen to watch more powerful stories just like these.